Like, you can't say that. Hello and welcome back to Slaggy Book Club, the book club that is everything but a book club. I'm Cameron, and in today's episode, I'm going to be sharing with you my nonfiction November TBR, and I am so excited. We are still persevering with the past, present, and future consumption structure. It is working for me. It may not be working for you guys. Kind of flopping lately, but we push forward. It is always a risk to try something new, and it always takes a little bit of time for it to settle in and start working. So we persevere, we push on, and we start with our recent consumption. I did finish the Argonauts, and I did really enjoy it. I loved it actually, and yes, I now again want to read more from Maggie Nelson. Before reading the Argonauts, I was like, I know I should read Maggie Nelson. I know that she is a celebrated writer. A lot of people whose opinions I respect and often agree with love her writing. I know that I need to read her and read multiple of her works. I did have a little freak out when I started the Argonauts, but I am now back on the Maggie Nelson train. I feel so clever and smart and intellectual after reading that book. I think that it is such a approachable approach, good sentence, to like an intellectual writing, and like it is very smart. It draws on a lot of texts. She draws on a lot of other people's theories and philosophies and ethics, but is very much introspective and in her own head, in her own world. And it's this beautiful blending of memoir and research, I suppose. And yeah, very much want to read more. Like Love is still on my list, still a highly anticipated read for me. I just don't know how I'm going to get my hands on it. I did watch It's What's Inside. I mentioned last week that I had been recommended it, and yes, yeah, I sat down to watch it. I did do that. I sat on the couch and I pressed play and planted my eyes upon this film for an hour and however fucking 2 hours, I don't know. This movie is bizarre. This movie is so strange. Yes, it's like terrifying in the sense that if that actually happened, that would be horrific and very scary. Very scary thing to think about. If you like place yourself in the shoes of the people in the film too much, then like I feel like you could probably have like a panic attack. Insane premise. But the execution of this film is so over the top and so intense and weird that it almost felt silly. And it's like right from the get-go, there is a lot happening with lighting, a lot happening with sound, a lot happening with the way it's being filmed, a lot happening with the colors. It's all just like, it's a lot for the senses. And maybe like that's the whole point, but it also just felt like the editing team, the post-production team were like having a heyday and going cray cray and like applying every effect they could and just going silly crazy. And I do feel like it took away from the plot, and I feel like it could have been like this really intense, eerie, scary, unsettling film, but because there was just like so much going on with the light and sound and colors, etc., it was just insane. Like it was just weird. So yeah, I don't know, promising plot, crazy ideas, but the execution was just like not it for me, unfortunately. That cannot be the only film I watch in October though, and the clock is ticking. I've still not been to the cinema. God damn it. This cannot be the only film I watch. What is going on? Guys, SOS. Recommend me some films, because current consumption, I am still so hooked on Lost. Like all I want to watch still is Lost. Like if I am getting big screen time, if I sit down in the evening and have nothing to do and don't feel like reading, and that means it's big screen time, it's Lost, because I'm so hooked. And there are so many episodes and so many seasons that like I gotta give that show all the time I have to get through it and find out what the damn hell is going on, because the way this show leaves you with so many questions. And in saying this, right now, I'm suddenly realizing that maybe I should stop talking about Lost, because the more people that find out I'm watching Lost, the more trolls will find out I'm watching Lost, and spoilers are going to start appearing in my comments. Not that I really read my comments, because that shit is scary, and putting yourself on the internet is really terrifying and awful. Regardless, this is not an invitation. Stay out of my comments with your spoilers. Let me enjoy this very old TV show. My current read, I literally picked up this morning, so I really do not have much to say about it at all yet. I am like 20 pages in, but I'm very much enjoying what I'm reading so far. It is Perfume Pain by Dorn. I am reviewing this one for the Shameless Book Club, so you will have to wait for my thoughts on it until they post them, but it will be like mid-November, so you only have to wait like a matter of 3 weeks. I feel like I'm going to smash this book out. Like, it is very easy reading, it is very flowy, it is very entertaining writing, the tone is a bit of me. And the reason I wanted to pick this up, I did see it doing the rounds on the socials and it looked cool. A pink cover will always grab my attention, but it also sounded like a cool, fun book. And then I guess it drifted out of my attention. And then one of my colleagues read it and she was like, I had to DNF. I had to just stop because I was gobsmacked at the way the protagonist was talking, and she felt like it was too edgy. Like, you can't say that, edgy. So that really piqued my interest, and I was like, oh, let me suss. Let me get the tea. Is it really like problematic? I want to know. So now I'm reading it, and so far so good. Nothing too alarming, but like I said, I'm 20 pages in, so we'll see, but I'm excited. This is going to be my last fiction read for a while though. Speaking of perfume, incredible segue opportunity, thank you. I went to a fragrance launch last week. It was such a gorgeous little event, and it was for Mihan Aromatics new Sinful Rose scent. It was a lovely little event, but I came away with a little box of samples of each of their scents, which I have been making my way through, and it is honestly perfect timing for me to have scored this little sample pack because I am so desperately in the market for a new scent, hoping that one of these is going to be my new signature scent. The latest one I tried is called Kira Curl, and when I sniffed it from the bottle I was like, oh nah, probs not. But then when I sprayed it on myself, I was like, hold on a minute, that's kind of yummy. It's got base notes of vanilla, which is shocking that I like that at all, but it's got top notes of sea salt and lemon, which feels very beachy. Like, I put this on and I felt like a hot surfer dude, and I'm kind of into it. But anyway, it's only the second one I've tried. I've still got to make my way through all the rest, and then I will make my final decision about what my new signature scent is going to be. But I just wanted to shout out Mihan Aromatics and say thank you very much for inviting me to your event, because you might be changing my life right now. You might be saving my life. Future consumption. This is the moment we have all been waiting for. This is why we are all here listening to this episode, fast forwarding through the first 2/3. We have been waiting to get to my November TBR, my non-fiction November TBR. I am going to tell you about the 5 books that I hope to read in November. Look, I'm aiming for 5, but a couple of them are quite chunky. And we know a non-fiction is like obviously a bit more dense, takes a bit more time to process than a fiction, at least for me. So 5 feels ambitious, but if I can get through all 5 of these, then I am making a very significant dent in my physical TBR, and it's gonna feel amazing. So the calendar for November is looking very much like reading every day, no time for anything else, and I'm really excited. The first book I will be picking up in November is one that I have been dying to read since I discovered it existed. You've probably heard me expressing my excitement about this book already. I feel like I've been talking about it for a long time now. It is Gina Chick's memoir, We Are the Stars. Now, this one is chunky. This is probably the biggest book. Yes, this is the biggest book that I plan to read this month, so I am going to smash it out first, but it's also the book I am the most excited to read. Now, if you do not know, Gina Chick is the incredible, spoiler, winner of the first season of Alone Australia, and watching her journey on that show was truly one of the most awe-inspiring, moving things I have ever witnessed. This woman is so fascinating and resilient and full of hope, and I am just so excited to read what she has to say because, oh my god, like what a woman. What a woman. The next book that I plan to read in November is the second book by the prolific prodigy that is Hannah Ferguson. Her new one called Taboo, which is an investigation of all the things that have historically been considered taboo. This is out on November 12th, and it is part memoir, gets a bit more personal than Hannah's first book, which I really adored, but I'm really interested for the sort of deeper, more personal, more memoir element that she is going to go into in this book. Now, sexuality is a subject matter that I'm very interested in reading. I read a lot about these things, and so I am always curious when I go into a new book about these topics what the author has to say that is new, that is fresh. Because I do feel like oftentimes I will pick up a book on this subject matter and it's a lot of the same stuff again. But Hannah is a very smart, clever lady. I enjoy everything she has to say. Bite Back was, like I said, a brilliant read. And this has been compared to Dolly Alderton's Everything I Know About Love, which is one of my top books ever. So I have very high expectations for this. No pressure, Hannah. And I really look forward to diving in. Next is a book that has been on my shelf for way too long. This one came out back in June. It is Strange Little Girl by Jessica Knight. And I requested this title from Ultimo after I saw Jessica herself do a reading at an event I attended. And it was really moving and really interesting. And I think that Jessica is a really interesting person and has a really unique story to tell. So this is her memoir. And basically, Jessica grew up on a farm in rural Victoria in a very Mormon family. And she tried her best to be like the good God-fearing daughter that her parents wanted. But she was also like constantly subjected to medical testing and surgeries, and her doctors deemed her like a medical mystery, and she had a really rough time grappling with her reality and her identity. So this is kind of the story of her breaking out of the traditional, very good Mormon lifestyle that she was expected to have and going on her journey to find herself and live her authentic truth. It sounds a little bit like wacky. I think that Jessica has a real sense of humor, but I think it's also going to be quite moving and devastating as well. But it's just such a, like I said, unique story that I think it's going to be a really fascinating read. And it's been a long time since I read a pure just memoir by someone who's not a celebrity or a public figure, someone who, I don't know, just, a regular person who has had an interesting life and has an interesting story to tell. And I think I forget how much I enjoy reading memoirs of this kind. So I'm really excited to dive in and find out what Jessica has to share. Okay, the second largest book that I'm going to try to tackle in November, it's one I'm really excited for as well. And I bought this because a couple of the girls I work with at the bookshop have read this and really loved it and completely sold me on it. It is Doppelganger by Naomi Klein, and this is a really interesting story by the sounds of things. This came out last year and I think won a prize or two. And basically, it's Naomi Klein investigating the fact that there was a period where she was mistaken for Naomi Wolf. You might know the name Naomi Wolf because she is the feminist writer behind the quite iconic text, The Beauty Myth. I made it about halfway through The Beauty Myth and DNF'd and never picked it back up again. Anyway, apart from looking visually very similar, Naomi Klein and Naomi Wolf are both feminist leftist authors of kind of significant status. The problem with them being mixed up is that Naomi Wolf, author of The Beauty Myth, kind of fell off. Around the time of the COVID pandemic, she fell down a very right-wing, anti-vax conspiracy theorist rabbit hole and became quite a problematic person, which is quite a horrifying trajectory for a, feminist author of an iconic feminist text. But of course, Naomi Klein was being mistaken for Wolf and started receiving death threats and hate on the internet. And so Klein has sort of decided to take that and dig right in and really investigate and look into politics and the internet and the way that the internet has warped and exacerbated the political spectrum, and how does a heralded feminist author go from that to this conspiracy theorist hellhole. It's apparently very clever and very intellectual and introspective and dense and a lot to get your head around and process, and I think it's probably going to take me a lot longer than I want it to get through, but I think it's gonna, I feel like I'm just gonna be like 20 times smarter when I finish this book. Everyone who I've spoken to or briefly interacted with on the internet who has read this book has said it is fantastic. So, I'm excited to raise my IQ. Finally, I am very curious to pick up Casey Tanner's book, Feel It All. I was sent this a few months ago, and Casey is a therapist, a sex therapist, and this is her kind of guide to sex and relationships and gender. It feels like it's going to be very much in the same vein as Dr. Emily Nagoski's Come As You Are. Of course, I guess with different philosophies and takes and opinions, etc. I'm curious because, again, like I said, this is an area, a subject matter that I'm very interested in reading about, that I really find very fascinating and really enjoy reading about, but it's hard to find different takes, new information, new ideas. So very curious to see what Casey's take is. I feel like it's going to be very gender sexuality focused. I believe Casey herself is queer. So yeah, I hope that I can get to this book as well, because again, it's been on my shelf for way too long. I do find myself putting off the kind of more intellectual / dense feeling nonfiction books on my shelves, which is why I am so excited for Nonfiction November, not only as an excuse to fast track the books I'm really excited to read to the top of my TBR, but also to really push myself to get stuck into the books that I've been putting off. Friends, that is all I have for today. Let me know if you're going to be participating in Nonfiction November, and if you are, what you're going to be reading. My DMs are always open at Cameron Gibb on Instagram. Otherwise, all my other social handles are linked down below or in the show notes. My comments are always open, despite the fact that I just said I don't really look at those. So jump in my DMs, come chat, let me know what you're reading. As always, guys, a thumbs up on YouTube or a 5-star rating on Spotify has a huge impact. So if you are enjoying consuming Slaggy Book Club and listening to me yap, then share the love, please. It actually really helps me to keep chatting with you each week. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you again next week. Love ya.